All right, guys, welcome to another video. As you can see, I'm not alone on the channel today. There is Vitto here, and we are doing a interview together today where Vitto is expressing his manifestation journey, what he experienced so far, what he manifested. So we will hear some amazing stories. And also we came up with quite a few topics that we felt are relevant to go over, and we're going to hear Vitto's, perspective on it and what he has learned over the time that he has also been in the Upgrade to Life community. So, Vitto, would you like to say hi and introduce yourself?
How you doing, everybody? Just want to say, super excited to be here. I'm very grateful for Nicholas for giving me this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of my experiences, kind of talk a little bit about the community, my experiences within that, and also, maybe drop some gems and help some people out and provide some value to that. So I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome, bro. It's guys, you will feel and experience it yourself that throughout this interview, how much wisdom Vitto has gained and applied in his life. And we had a quick small talk before we now started recording, and already the wisdom that came through in those like 5 minutes of going through the notes is outstanding. So I recommend you watch this fully and take out the most of like knowledge that you can that is possible. So let's start off with some successes, right? Because we figured out that hey, probably people first want to hear some of the achievements before we then dive deeper into the actual like fundament beneath those surface level successes, which of course are still amazing. So one of the successes that we talked about and that you wanted to share is you manifesting yourself home from the job. So there's this whole entire story and setup. So for someone listening, yeah, how would you explain the story? What happened? What's the success for you here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this story took place about 2 years ago. I was working in my home state. I was actually at the time a lot of my friends from high school and college. We were all accumulated in this one place. So it was a good time. I was enjoying myself. I was working with my father. Some things happened with his job as far as salary. They had some disagreements. My father wasn't happy with the amount of money that was being provided, so he took a job that was a couple states away. We were supposed to be there for a full year, no difference. So I had said my condolences. I had said goodbye to my friends. And then very shortly, within about 24 hours, I realized that, hey, you know what? Back home actually seems a whole lot better than where I am at right now. And to give context, this is before I had really discovered Neville. In my experience, I think one saying I've heard that really resonates is when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's always been a consistent truth in my life. So within 24 hours, actually, I was on YouTube and magically coincident, Neville had popped up on one of his audiobooks. I believe the two audiobooks that I had listened to was The Power. I think Feeling is the Secret was the first one,
Mm.
and then Power of the Awareness. So within the first day, first 2 days, I had learned he had talked about his main way of manifesting. At this point, I had little to none conscious manifestation experience. So in my head, I was like, I got nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, I'm stuck here. Best case scenario, but the desire arose, and that's really
Mm.
what I was paying attention to. In my heart, I felt like, what, I really want to go back home. So the application was very simple, as Neville always talks about, as Nicholas talks about, teaches in the community as well, was making a scene. So for the application, all I did was at night before going to bed, I had captivated the scene. It was super simple. I actually had nothing to do. It was nothing crazy. I was telling Nicholas, it was just me I visualized me walking into my house, and I was just going into my pantry. So it was something
Yeah.
very simple. And the application was just at night. I would do that right before bed. If I remembered in the morning, I would do it as well.
Mm.
And then also I had a lunch break. It was like a 30-minute lunch break because we were working like 10-hour days. So we had, I was happy for the 30-minute lunch break. Um, and I was actually fortunate enough. So I would just sit down, just like Neville said, relax, stay akin to sleep, relax myself as much as I could. And I would just loop the scene. It was probably, for context, maybe 5 seconds.
Mm.
Maybe it was a short 5 second scene, just like Neville talks about. It's about the implications. So I just looped that over and over and over. And to give a time frame, I started doing this on the first day. By the third day, I started seeing movement. My father had came into the room. He said, "Hey, the old company said they're going to call me. We're going to try to renegotiate a contract." I was happy as can be. I was ready to go home right then and there. I was like, "Dude, let's go. I'm ready." And then he came back into my room and he said, "Yeah, they didn't do it. Like they didn't. They wouldn't go for it."
Yeah.
Um, But the funny thing was, and I wasn't in and aware, we'll talk about this probably later on, as far as like the wish fulfilled and the knowing, the faith
Mm,
in it. I
mm,
had done that scene so many times subconsciously, I had shifted my state.
yep,
So when that news happened, we talk about reactions being one of the greatest indicator as far as where you are psychologically.
yep.
I wasn't phased by it. There was no emotion tied to it. It was just like what I ate for lunch yesterday. I was like, okay, I heard the news, but in my head, I was like, no, it's done.
Mm,
So even then, I kept persisting. I kept doing the same ritual. And then on the sixth day, he said, hey, listen, they're gonna call me tonight. We'll see how it goes. In my head, I was like, yo, we're out of here. I got it. And he came back in my roommate 15 minutes later, and he said, "Hey, tomorrow we're going back home." They agreed to the amount, and then on the seventh day, which is funny, it's on the Sabbath. Finished up that work day. I was back home that night with after 15 hours or so of driving. So yeah, that was the little short little for one of my first conscious experiences that really like grew the faith in the law.
it's outstanding. It's outstanding. You know what? Why? While you were just explaining that, it really reminds me also of the story of Neville when he wanted to be honorably discharged from the army, and he would imagine being
Mm,
back at home in his apartment. You basically did the same thing in your context, like in your own, in your own experience. But
absolutely.
what did that story taught you internally? I know we will go over some other stories and way more
Right.
topics, but alone
Right.
that experience when you then look back and you say, okay, I imagined that, and then I ended up home. Now reflecting back on that, did that boost your faith in the law? Did that make you feel more in control over your life, so to speak, or what did that lead to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things, you just hit it on the edge, was just the control over life, because as we grow up, as we're conditioned, we're taught that life, into a sense, is very spontaneous in the sense of you don't have a lot of control. It's just like, oh, these people that accomplished X, Y, and Z, they were special, or these people, their background, or they just so had fate, et cetera, et cetera. So this experience really, in my mind, opened up that door of possibility that, hold on, wait a minute, maybe I do, this thing that we call life, this thing that we call reality, maybe it's more, there's more tangible to it.
Mm,
Maybe it's a little more flaccid, it's not so set in stone. Maybe there is a little bit of control that I have. And it really subconsciously it opened up that door where I started to see the correlation between inside and out.
nice.
As within, so
Yep.
without, I really started getting on that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that because just today, if you believe it or not, I recorded a YouTube video again on the topic of the game of life, where also Neville said that those who see the connection between the inner world and the outer reflection, those are the ones who are like winning the game of life. If they then make conscious use
Absolutely.
of that and they start to, intend for new states, which are then expressed. So that is an amazing first story. You also shared a story about a specific person, but not, there's one specific story with a specific friend, and then there's a specific person story in a romantic, setup. So would you like to tell us more about those two stories?
Yeah, we're gonna do both. I'm gonna give the people what they want. So
Definitely.
and I know, especially, we'll start with the romantic because I know that relationships are a very important part of life in general. They're very intimate, especially when you want something, a desire. It's okay to desire a person. It happens all the time. So to give context, this is actually let's say a beautiful lady that I'd met about 3 years ago. I had met her through a friend. We had only talked once or twice. But within meeting her, I really loved, obviously, to me, she was drop dead gorgeous. But the
Mm,
most important thing was I loved her personality, and she was very funny.
mm,
So in
nice.
my mind, it's very funny. This was probably like a year after that whole story with me coming back home. I subconsciously, one way we could probably get into it as far as, past making a scene, as far as different techniques. But when I had met her, as soon as I met her after that first time, the first thought I had in my mind was like, we are going to date at some time. Um, and that was to give a context. That was probably in May that I had met her. And then we had no contact for like 6 or 7 months, like none.
Mm,
It was
mm,
radio silent on
mm-hmm,
both ends.
mm-hmm.
There's nothing going on. Um, but I kept persisting in the knowing that I was like, you know what, we had a great time. I think we really get along. And sure enough, in September, her birthday was coming up, and she actually reached out to me. And she was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in so and so area. I would love to get together with you and love to see you again." And to me, I was like, "Oh, I'm in. Let's do it." And from there, it just kind of started to unfold naturally. And then we started talking. And actually, we ended up, we had a great relationship for a set period of time for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So that was like the relationship
Mm.
story. And then as far as the friendship, um, around 2021, really started in 2019. I had a friend. He's my best friend currently. But I had met him in college, and we went to the same high school, and we were good friends from 2019 to 2021. And then just being young, we had some disagreements. We kind of had a falling out. And then we just kind of got to the point where like, hey, we're not going to talk to each other ever again, for
Mm.
whatever reason. So we dropped that. And this year, actually, it was in January. All of a sudden, I started thinking like, man, I wonder how he's doing. So I would always talk about him and my brother because we were like inseparable. We were always together, always hanging out. And me and my brother started talking, and I was like, man, I wonder how he's doing. And there again, same thing with with the romantic. I just started telling myself, I was like, you know what, he's gonna reach out. Like we'll get in contact. And then 2 months passed from January to March of this year. And then I even had from circumstances, because I know we always talk about circumstances not mattering. I actually had his number blocked at the time being. And
Mm.
something happened, a bridge had unfolded, and he actually reached out to a group chat with me and my brother. So initially, I didn't even see the text message. I just
Yep.
saw that there was a group chat that was created with him in it. And we rekindled, and now we're better, and we're back and better than ever. We
Mm.
talk pretty much every day now.
two two very interesting stories, and I love also that this has rekindled like a whole friendship, which would have
Yeah,
gone, which would have stayed lost if you would have not also caused like that shift inside of you. Just a
absolutely.
question for both of these stories. When I heard it correctly,
Sure.
there was no, let's just say, long scene or stuff like that involved. It was more like a confident expectation or knowing you just like decided it. There was you didn't supported it with like another shifting method, if that is right, or
Right.
did you do something more on both for the SP?
Yeah. Yeah, so sorry. So what I was going to say is, as far as scenes go, these two I did not use scenes.
Okay.
Because for me personally, like when we talk about techniques, there's infinite different techniques.
Yeah.
Neville Goddard's obviously the scene, and I had used scenes previously, and I still use scenes now. But
Mhm.
with these two circumstances, it was more of affirming, and it was a knowing.
Okay.
And
Got it.
the reason I didn't use and support it with scenes is because I didn't feel it was. I was able to
Mm.
say those statements, and they felt natural. They
There
felt
was no
like, yeah, I was
resistance,
already.
probably. There was probably
Yes, yeah,
very less resistance
absolutely.
because you, or alone these statements were enough. Sorry to cut you off, but you made a very important point, because it's like sometimes it is enough. It will feel totally enough to just intend for it, and we will already have the full trust in it. And sometimes, as you might also know, it is more helpful to establish a more intensive knowing or conviction or belief that is done by supporting it with like another method. But it's awesome how you just did that by deciding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you to elaborate more on that, I use a more of a dynamic approach,
Hmm.
and I think for just easeability and just to make it fun, because I think it should be fun. Life is fun. We're here to enjoy ourselves, to experience our desires, to have experiences. I really just gauge it on, just like you said, resistance is the key word.
Yeah.
Because just like when I did the first scene, when I was manifesting myself home, I used the scene, but that's because I didn't have as much trust in the law. I
Mm.
really didn't know
Yeah.
anything about the law. I didn't even know if it's real. I just heard this dude in an audiobook talking about imagination. I was like, I got nothing else to lose at this point. There's no other way out. But yeah, the key word is resistance, because there obviously are other things that I have used scenes for, but those would be things that I have internally. I could feel there were more resistance.
Yeah.
But it just so happened in these two categories, being friendships and relationships, that I didn't have a lot of resistance.
Mm. Fully got it. Yeah. Okay. Also, another story that, or I think there were two more. One is that interview, which we can say at the end. That's also pretty cool.
Oh
There
yeah,
was there was one that you also mentioned that in a call, I believe, which was this callback from the job offer where they didn't you didn't hear from them, but then they call back. I think that's also very interesting if you would bring that up, and then we can also tell the members that this interview basically started also in your imagination. Now we're here recording it, and now people are watching this right now, but it started also in your imagination. So which of those stories
absolutely.
would you like to tell first?
Well, let's start with the job. So I think
Yeah.
that's another category or another area of life is very important. Career, job, money.
Yeah.
So this took this place. This was in 2021 as well. This was the end of 2021, if I can remember correctly. I was transitioning from different career paths. So this was the first time I went to give a little context for people. I was going from one field to another, a brand new field with no
Mm.
experience. So this was like an entry level job. It was a sales position, and I really wanted to expand myself. And I just felt like at that time I had a desire to go from where I was to grow in within myself and to
Yeah.
go more into that. So I had a desire to grow, and one of the things was I saw a job that had to do with sales. So I went and I applied. I got in for the interview. I was feeling good during the interview. You know, I felt, in my opinion, I had a great interview. I'll be honest. I think I rocked it. I know I rocked it. And the
I
people
think
loved
so.
me. So at that, yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. So we did the first round interview, and then immediately after they did the second round interview. So like I said, when you're in a job scenario, that's usually a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That usually
Mm-hmm.
is like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we like you as a candidate. So I went to first, second round interview. I met the boss. It was a good location. It was a little bit farther from my house, but I loved the office. I loved what they were doing as far as a lot of it had to do with helping the community. So I was really I believed in the mission. It was helping others.
Mm.
So I was like, yeah, I got it. So I met the owner, shook his hand. How you doing? I'm like, hey, I'm doing great. And at the end of the second round interview, he said, hey, listen, if you're the candidate for us, we'll give you a call back at 3 p.m.
Mm.
Let you know
Okay.
that phone was not ringing at 3 p.m. that day.
Yeah. Damn.
And that was on a Friday. And that was on a Friday. You know, it's very funny to me, like just rethinking about it, because I remember my brother came in and he was super excited for me. Hey man, they call you back? And then I was like, no, bro, they didn't. They didn't call me back. And you know, he's trying, oh, bro, you know, don't worry about it. But back to what we were talking about with circumstances not mattering, even though that happened, it never shook my faith. I had a knowing because I knew
Mm.
I claimed it. I was like, yo, I'm working here. They love me. I know they love me. I know I killed that interview. I know I'm the right candidate. So that was on a Friday. So no call back at 3 p.m. But just like with any other math station, right? Even when there are a little bit of circumstances, that didn't bother me because
Yeah.
I had the knowing and I had the faith. So fast forward, no contact, nothing on Saturday, nothing on Sunday. I actually forgot about it. I stopped
Mm.
thinking about it. I was doing
Mm.
other things in my life. Lo and behold, Monday morning, I'm actually out. I'm doing something. I believe I was at a museum, and I looked at my phone starts vibrating. I see the area code. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Pick up the phone. Hey, this is so and so. Sorry I didn't get back to you. And like I said, talking about,
Mm.
I don't want to go off topic, but and this is the beauty of life because you really don't know how things are going to unfold.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because when they called me, what had happened was they actually went on they were on a business trip for that weekend. So they
Mm.
didn't call anybody. So when they had
Mm-hmm.
called me, they said, hey, this is so and so. Sorry I didn't get back to you. We were actually on a business trip. Just got back into the office on Monday. You know, how do you think you did? Of course, my answer was I did fantastic. I know I rocked it. They agreed with me, and then they actually offered me the job. So I got the job on the spot. So that was the bridge that went through.
Bro, first of all, congratulations again on that story. Yet another powerful one. In that time when you manifested that job, did you also already knew about the law of assumption, or was that in a phase where you still like just trusted yourself, or was that when you already noticed that, hey, even if they tell me, or even if they haven't called back right now, that's not final, that's not stuck. I persist in that unseen assumption
Yeah.
that they will call me, that I have this job. So did you already know about the teachings, or was it prior to that?
Yeah, so this was after. This was after all these. So these it's very funny actually. You're chronological in a sense
Yeah.
because it was me coming home, then the relationship, and then the job would be right after that. So as
Mm,
far as the teachings, like I knew about it, I had experience with it,
yeah.
but I wasn't super engulfed in it. You know, because
Yeah.
like I said, what we're doing is natural. We're just like we had talked about before is we're
Mm,
just trying to, we're trying to logic our way through. We're trying to explain like, hey, this is how this happens, and so it's etc.
yes.
Um, but the number one thing was, yeah, I had the faith, and it goes into it because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to: is confidence, is belief in yourself, it's the knowing. That's what creates.
Mhm.
So I had that even in those circumstances, and also my self concept was that I always get the job.
Yeah.
So we
Hmm.
could talk about that later on, self concept, the importance of it.
Absolutely.
But that's why I had very little resistance in these categories. Like there's other things I've had a lot more resistance to, like money, things like that, that I
Mm.
really had to persist and take a lot of conscious effort into switching. But in these particular, I knew it. It was a knowing.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Then the yeah, the last story that we can share today is probably the one with the interview, which you also introduced to me, which I didn't use till we started our call in the first place, and you mentioned that to me. So the reason why we're doing that interview, if I heard it correctly from you, is because you also intended that, you also imagined that. You can also tell the audience about that, because I think that's a funny one.
Oh yeah, it's a very fun. Honestly, it might be my favorite. I'm not gonna lie. Out of all those stories right now,
Yeah.
this is it's definitely my favorite. So to give context, like I said, I joined the program. I was in the program. Kind of, we had talked about it. We can probably go a little bit deeper towards the end of it. But I was in the program, wasn't doing too much in the first like 6 months, and then after seeing the interviews with Harris, first of all, shout out Harris. I love Harris. That man,
Shout out to
fantastic.
Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Harris. That's my guy. But after going through and watching the interviews, specifically with Harris, the desire came up, arose me, and this was a couple months. This is probably 3 months ago. The desire came up probably in January. Well, I was like, I want to do an interview. I was like, I'm gonna do an interview
Nice.
with Nicholas. And to me, I was trying not to smile during the intro because we had talked about it previously, but my scene was hearing you. I was like I said, this is one of the times I used a scene. Um,
Hmm.
but my scene was you saying, "Hey," was doing the intro. Hey guys, Nicholas from
Yep.
Upgrade Live.
Yep.
I'm here with Vitto. Um, so yeah, this interview in itself was something that I first imagined a couple months ago, and then now it's just not playing out. Probably about 6 months ago. It was
Yeah.
towards the beginning of the year that I had this desire to do this interview, and like here we are now. So
Here we go. Yeah, in that case, I was moved to kind of like, also reach out to you, and we talked about it. You were immediately like open for it. So yeah, thanks for doing it. I mean, now the audience can listen to us and this amazing conversation and gain value from it. So thanks for doing that,
absolutely,
man.
yeah, no, like I said, I'm happy to be here. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that was first of all, right, guys. So you now heard Vito's stories and insights and manifestations. So that Vito went through all of that, and also this built up his faith and trust in this law. But we wanted to put that on purpose on the beginning to kind of like satisfy you. So here, okay, yes, he did experience things, but there's way more to that, right? There's things that you need to really understand, and we want to dive into that right now. So that's why I recommended you in the beginning to stay till the end. So one of these topics, Vito, that we thought would be helpful to talk about towards the audience is awareness, right? So the points we made is like awareness is the foundation. It's what's missing in a lot of teachings. Yeah, it improves the quality of life, and it helps to not stay stuck in an identity. So take us with you. Like when you stumbled first upon this awareness teachings, like how was that for you? How eye-opening was it for you? And again, how has it helped you in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we are talking about awareness to go into it because I think the best way to explain awareness, it's no different than let's say if you were building a skyscraper, right? Or a building in general is only as strong as its foundation. And going off of what a lot of teachings that are out there, they always talk about techniques, techniques, how to get, how to get, how to get. But what you're missing, and the most important, not just for manifestation, but just quality of life is awareness.
Mm.
Like I said, for me, it was monumental. It was honestly mind blowing when I was going through the course for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the first module you talk about. So for being able to disidentify yourself, the quality of life is honestly I can't even explain it. It's
Mm.
180 degrees. Especially from somebody with my background, I was somebody that was very caught up in thinking, very caught up in thoughts, um, very caught up in emotions. So being able and just really coming into the realization that like whoa, like I am just observing these. The freedom that comes from that, especially the day to day life, the quality of life. Because manifestation is great. It's like you talk about two types of happiness in life, and I think happiness is something that innately we all strive for.
Yeah.
We all want to be happy. We all want to experience happiness. And you talk about in the course. I mean, the two types are really you have when something happens. Let's say you get something. It's like just like with the stories. It felt fantastic when I got the job. It felt fantastic when I got the specific person. But in the long term scheme of life, those are only little snippets of life.
Yep.
Those are only
Yes.
little moments. And after that, then you go back to what? You go back to normality. You go
Mm.
back to day to day. So being able to learn about that and understanding, your thoughts, understanding yourself, understanding myself at a deeper core,
Mm.
it's been a game changer. It's been what is missing in most teaching. It's
Yeah.
something that is what people would think is minute. that's like, yeah, just give me the good stuff, which I understand. You want to get something, I understand. Everybody has desires, you want to fulfill those. But beyond that, like I said, a bigger portion of life is just being aware. It's the day-to-day
Mm.
life. It's the quote unquote mundane things of life. I'm not saying that I don't want to put that label on life, but it's not that things are happening all the time. Yes, they are, but to a certain extent, there's a lot of periods where you're just by yourself,
Yes.
and it affects it creeps out in all areas of life, friendships, how you interact with people, how you interact with relationships, how you view life in general. It's like
Mm.
we were talking about, you go from being a like Neville, I think Neville said, you go from being like a pawn on a chessboard, so you become the whole chessboard.
Yep. Exactly. I loved how you put that. I fully agree. Would you say that when you started to practice self-awareness more in your life, that because of you no longer being so heavily entangled or so heavily attached to all of these arising, like for example, thoughts, that this brought the quality, more quality to your life, or that because you feel more peaceful? I know we're trying to describe something which is very hard to put in words, but if you can do it, what would be the closest to express it from your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. Peace is the best word I can put it. Peace is absolutely the best word because in my experience, talking from my experience, one of the things that as far as quality of life, being a peace is what we're striving for, right?
Mm.
Just to be, peace is like it's like Rupert Spear, he's a great spiritual teacher. He uses the analogy of the sky where he says, happiness and being is like the sky, and thoughts, emotions are like the clouds that come in between. And for
Yep.
myself, sometimes you get so engulfed in the clouds that you forget, like, hold on, wait on. I'm
Mm.
just observing these. And by that disconnection, because in my experience, a lot of negativity or pain in life is psychological. It's not really
Oh
what
yes.
happens to you, it's how you
Mm.
perceive something, right? And if you're too entangled in thoughts, you could go on and on and on, thinking on and on, this scenario, this, and this, and this. And then there's no quietness, there's no peace, there's no being, which is what it is at its core. When you're being, that's where everything is. It's calm. It's like when you're in the bottom depths of the ocean. But if you're too identified with the waves,
Mm.
yeah, life is hectic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I fully agree. There's nothing to add to this. And I can tell, the great example of Vitto is also, guys, for you to understand. And that's something I say in the beginning of the program. There's like a start a journey section. I say, hey, like immerse yourself into those teachings. And for me, I've done this stuff now over years and years and years. And I can tell when someone has immersed themselves in those teachings because of the wording they use, because of just the way they express it, right? Because then you get to this point where you really notice that you're changing your perspective and experience. And other people who still, after 5 years, kind of like ask sometimes the same questions. And I'm still happy to answer them. But I like that you're really like this doer of the word, which we'll also talk about in a second. So respect to you. And one thing you also mentioned in the context of awareness was that it helped you to shift states, identity, self concept better, because as you said it in our small talk before we pressed recording, is that when we're unaware, it's very easy for us to fall back into this momentum of the old state, right? Because it has also grown habitual, that old identity. And then we want to shift, but it's always like this back and forth. So, is there anything else you would like to mention here? How awareness has helped you to always then, like, more and more come back to the new identity?
Yeah, absolutely. You really hit the nail on the head. I'm glad that you brought that point up. That is one of the most important things with about learning awareness because it allows you to make that disconnection, right?
Mm.
Because before I learned about it, I thought this is me, this is just how life is, right? This is how most people, I would say, view life to a certain extent. They're just like, yeah, this is how life is. This is who I am,
Yeah.
right? And when you come from that standpoint, how can you change? It's very hard to change because if you
Mm.
tell yourself that story and you're saying, yeah, this is me, this is how I am, life is X, Y, and Z, there's no room for growth.
Yeah.
And if you don't, like I said, if you don't change at the core, how is anything else going to change? But by learning that, hold on, this is not really me. This is just a version of me, a self concept, a state.
Mm.
The ability to make the disconnection is impeccable.
Yeah.
And especially with shifting states, that in between state, when you're first going through it, can kind of get a little hectic because you
Mm.
got this version of yourself that for X amount of years that this is who you've been, and you're trying to shift it in any area or maybe just in general. But being able to learn about awareness for me has allowed me to look at it objectively. Instead of
Yeah.
looking through the state in a
Mm.
sense, It's like you're looking at the state.
Yeah.
So there's
Mm.
a disconnect.
Yeah.
So that really that disconnect right there, and like you said, with any type of self awareness, it's needed in order. I mean, yeah, I would say it's not needed, but it's very helpful when it comes to shifting states
Yeah.
because you can nuances you have to pick up on. Like, okay, am I doing this? Is this happening? My reaction is this way, or this and that. Is this, you know?
I think you are right when you say that it is needed. I know what you meant by saying it is not needed, because we could say, hey,
Right.
we could also just imagine without that self-awareness. But intuitively, I think you are right by saying it is needed, because when we talk about the three fundamentals of manifesting, like Neville said, self-observation, uncritical self-observation, definition of aim and detachment, then self-observation is the first, and it means to observe, hey, what are my reactions to life? Where do I feel limited? Where do I have desires? And that shows us, hey, where we can outgrow our present level of self. And so that self-observation really helps us to understand, hey, what is not final. What is, like you said, just a state. And it's not me who I am fully. It's just what I'm identified with. But that awareness, therefore, is then needed to see, hey, it's not who I'm essentially, and I can shift. It's really wise what you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Cool.
agree completely. I would
Yeah.
agree completely on that.
One topic that we just started to scratch on a little bit was this about being a doer of the work, being someone who applies this stuff and who engages in it and who makes their own experiences, and someone who listens. And there was also this interesting story how you came back into being motivated to like go through the modules and applying it here and there in your life. I think that would also be a great topic to dive into right now. What do you think about that, and what brought you back to, yeah, be a doer?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the, like I said, I learned about Neville probably about 3 or 4 years ago, but it's kind of been an unconscious thing. It hasn't been something I've deliberately been doing. And to give context, I was telling people I've been in the program. I think it's been about a year now. I might be
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but I think it's around a year. So when I first started, I was in tutorial hell. It's like when you're in information overload. It's like you're
Yeah.
absorbing everything, but
Mm.
real learning. And I think I was thinking about this as far as learning goes per person. Nobody really teaches you anything. You have to teach it to yourself. It's like people can guide you in a direction,
Mm.
but it's not until you do it that you really learn. Like, okay, this is honest. And
Yeah.
yeah, I had a funny story. So this is probably about 6 months ago after being in the course. I was just focusing on day to day life. I wasn't taking a conscious effort, thing. You get busy. I had things I was doing.
Yep.
And I was telling Nicholas, I was actually at the gym and I have, obviously I'm subscribed to Nicholas, obviously. That's how we got here. And I have his notifications on. Yeah, shameless
Nice.
plug right there. But I had his notifications and I was at the gym and a video of his, I don't remember the title or what it was about, but it popped up. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, like it was like a whole, it's like the goggles came off. I was like,
Mm.
oh, I should listen to this. And I clicked on it. And as soon as I listened to it, because the beauty of your YouTube channel, for example, is you really do give all the information out. Like you really talk, like I said, you really talk about everything and you give the answers to everything.
Mm.
So it was a reminder to me. And like I said, I was just fortunate enough to be in the course. So being able to go back into it kind of started a fire like, oh, you know what? I really learned about this. Like, let's get serious about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing because
Mm.
like I said, I don't know how any other way to say it, but like you're in control of the life of your life, how it ends out. Like you need to be proactive in a sense to it,
Yeah.
because if not, you're just going to be unconscious and allow things to happen. But that
Mm.
sparked that back into me, and it wasn't until I went around the second time that I
Mm.
really started diving really
Mm.
deep. I started doing the meditations on a daily basis. I started doing, the exercise in the program.
Mm.
And then from there, you start building your faith again. Not that I ever lost it, but it's like a refresher. It's like when you do something
Absolutely.
for the first time again, you're like, oh, this really works. I totally forgot about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an eye opener. Being a doer is absolute. Any advice I can give is do. Just do. Doesn't matter even if you don't believe. I didn't believe.
Mm.
I don't think there's anybody that went to the program or any type of in this field has belief at first.
Yeah.
Because we can go into it. The mind doesn't believe what it's never experienced. So,
Yeah. Would you say that the video that randomly popped up in your feed and you saw that, like, that was then the motivation or the reminder for you enough to be like, hey, I actually do have desires, or I actually do feel like not fully satisfied. I do have some things in my life that I want to change. I want to switch up my self-concept, my identity, and then that was the motivation for you, and you went all back in, so to speak. Is that
Yeah,
what happened? Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what that did for me was reminded like where I was heading in the first place. You know, like when you have
Mm,
a path, sometimes you kind of get carried away. You like you take this path and you go this way. But what that did was spark back into me like, oh wait, hold on. Like, dude, I
yeah.
got this I'm working on. This is my path. This is what I need to and it really
Great.
all that just kind of came into. But yeah, it definitely, absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. It would be another great transition to also bring in the topic of self-concept versus specific manifestations, because you figured out by yourself, and we talked a little about that, is that eventually the external joy of the manifestation, like also fades, like you said, two types of happiness, like one from
Right.
the like seeing things on the outside, cool, there's a car, there's a house, there's a relationship. But we all know from our, no matter how old we are, that eventually things fade, or the joy can also decrease, so we can't attach our happiness to that on the outside. It's also that inner happiness component that of course we should have as a foundation. But now you said to me that you figured out that working on the self concept, the state identity, is more relevant, should be in more people's focus than only the techniques and the manifestations. What are your thoughts when you, yep, about that?
Yeah, I stand by that statement. You know, one thing, going back to the Harris interview, one thing that
Mm,
really stuck out to me is when you first get into this journey, it's all about getting, right? It's all about
yep,
getting X, Y, and Z because that's natural, right? You know, I think that's how most people get into this sphere is like
absolutely.
they want a relationship, they want more money, they want etc. They have a desire. But as you further along and progress in your journey, you really start to realize that the main point is about being. It's
Mm,
about who you are, you know, and just from a logical standpoint, you know, to kind of break it down, you know, self concept for me, I've had the most success when I focus on self concept.
okay.
Because if you think about anything, let's say more money, right? In order to make more money, let's say you're not making the money you want to make right now, the version of yourself right now is getting a result. So
Mm,
so you can logically, okay, well, this version is not doing it for me. So
yeah.
I need to become a brand new person. And by becoming a brand new person, a new self,
Mm,
and the result of that will be, you know, like the easiest way I can think about it is depending on your desire, there's a version of yourself that can not only obtain that, but maintain it. You know, and this is kind of, I didn't bring this up, but I think this is important. Self concept too is not only about receiving a manifestation, but also maintaining a manifestation,
yes. Yes.
right?
Well
Because
said.
let's say,
Hmm.
yeah, because let's say, for example, you want more money, you want to start a business, right? You can force the manifestation. If you want to use the technique, you can do the techniques, right? You can. I'm
Hmm.
not saying you won't get results, but can you maintain it, right? Let's
Mm,
say you want to make $10,000 a month, but deep at your at your level, at your self concept is not somebody that makes that money. Let's say you make it 1 month.
yeah.
I'm sure you want to do it for over and over and over again. I'm sure you just don't want 1 month of $10,000 a month.
Hmm.
Okay, well, how are you going to maintain that? That goes back to self concept.
Mm,
That goes back into who you are,
yeah.
because who you are dictates, like Neville says. I think it's paraphrasing, but the quote is, "It is I am's concept of itself that externalizes the world that
Mhm.
you live in."
Yep.
So for
Yep.
me, yeah, self concept is the most important thing because any manifestation or any desire you have is backed by a version of yourself that can not only, I mean, you're always deserving, but I'm talking about long term
Mm,
maintaining.
mm,
You know, and
mm.
I'm sure like in your own journey as well, like when you were transitioning from self employment from one area, because I know you had a business previously, into this, it's two different Nicholases. You know,
Absolutely.
there's different skills, there's different nuances, there's a whole new self concept.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a so like deep point you just opened up here, like such a very important topic. And you mentioned this great way of saying it, like in order to get and maintain it, we have to first within like be at the level where we are this new version. How have the teachings of creation is finished, like has that helped you to understand that, hey, this version of me, or this state, this identity, this outlook on life is already there. My only job, so to speak, is to consciously become aware of it, to fuse with it. Has that has something like that played a role for you?
Yeah, that's been an absolute game changer. I think that, along with the awareness, that has been the most powerful realization that I have came into.
Yeah.
Right? Because from there, it's like the foundation. Because from there,
Mm.
everything starts to make sense. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because just like when we have a desire, okay, even though most of the time, and just going back to human life, at any time there's ever been something new, whether it be an invention, whether it be a new area of life that is not there, it always starts within.
Yeah.
Whether it be an airplane, whether it be a car, whether it be the internet, cable, it didn't exist outside.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we first came in, if we're just going back in history, it didn't exist
Yeah.
on the outside. It always existed
Mm.
internally, right? Going back, creation is finished. And like I said, if that was not possible, if everything did not exist at once and creation was not finished, then nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
Because if you just
Mm.
think about it logically, how is it that I can see something in my mind's eye and it can come into fruition if it did not exist already?
Yep. Very
Because
well said.
if not, if that's not how it worked, then we would just we'd be in mud huts right now, and then I don't know what we'd be doing. We'd be throwing
I don't want to know,
spears.
man. We would do
Yeah, we'd
weird
be
stuff.
Yeah, we're cooked. Yeah, I'm about to say we would not be talking about Never right now.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's right. But yeah, I mean that's what Neville said, right? The core stone is man's concept of himself, right? That's really as you probably remember in the program, I say that's the blueprint that will determine how we continuously view life, but also how life, so to speak, views us, and
absolutely.
circumstances, people functioning as messengers, like how they will respond to us. Like it is amazing to, okay, I want to manifest money and I manifest 10K
Yeah,
once. Cool. Everybody can do that. Boom. Any circumstance will happen, you get the money. But if we then still are habitually in the consciousness and the awareness of a lacking person, a financially struggling person, we will find ways to spend that 10K, and we're back in the old identity instead of focusing, like you said so wisely, to shift fully like into this new identity that maintains the new results. I think that's what
absolutely.
more people should focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, and one little point I was just thinking about this. I want to add too, and I think some people they don't take into consideration that self concept is in general. And I'll give you an example. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say if you wanted a specific person,
Mm.
regardless, I'm not saying that you won't get that person, but it's not how you interact just with that person. It's that category of life.
Yes.
It's how you interact in relationships. Just like with
Mm.
business,
Mm-hmm.
$20,000 a month is no different than $30,000, $40,000, etc.
Yes.
But it's how you interact in business in general. It's are you a good business owner? Or are you a bad business owner? Whether it be in this niche, in this niche, in this, etc. It's all across. It's no different like that you just said with the Neville quote. If you're somebody that is a personable person, it's not that just one person will like you. It's that everybody around you is going to respond to that. It's not just a specific person
Mm-hmm. Fully
or
agree.
people.
I just glanced on the list of topics, and I think what we're just talking about, like this whole state shifting and how important the state is, and why people should really focus on the self concept, is that you also wanted to talk a little bit about your experience when it comes to in between shifting states, right? Because we all know that negative thoughts can come up, contradicting circumstances can come up. What is there that comes to your mind here? Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to bring in that you experienced when you shifted from one state, from your current state into a new state, and how you maybe dealt with those things that started to arise?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is when we were talking about Neville's three fundamentals, uncritical self-observation, keyword being uncritical.
Mm.
Because at least in my experience, I think one thing that can happen, and I'm just speaking for myself, is when you have spent so many years in a self-concept, let's say it's not a necessarily nice. Let's say you've been, for example, you've been poor your whole life. Shifting from trying to be in scarcity to abundance, there's going to be inevitably, especially when you first start, there's going to be some backlash,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about it from a logical standpoint, because you're literally you're becoming a brand new person. And I think one thing on my journey that's helped is really having a lot of self-compassion, and I think that's why Neville said uncritical, because at least in mine, a lot of the times, sometimes you can be very hard on yourself. Like, no, I shouldn't be thinking this, or
Mm-hmm.
no,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z, and it's not productive.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to treat yourself like a child. Like you wouldn't yell at a child for doing something that it doesn't know any better. It's just that's where the self compassion, the self love comes into, and the
Mm.
uncritical being able to allow yourself and not judge, because if anything, it's just going to prolong the process.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you start beating yourself up, it's like you're trying to beat yourself with a stick. You're trying to beat the mind into submission, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, very
That's
right.
not how it works.
Would you say, so when it comes to this uncritical self-observation, would you say that you've been able to decrease the time period it takes for you to see when you've fallen out of the state? And I'm asking this because my thesis or my philosophy, my statement is that a lot of people, they kind of know this. They know, okay, current state, desired state, I shift into that. But we talked about it, then we sometimes fall back because, well, it's not that we fall back, but then we get entangled again into these old beliefs, old thoughts, the old momentum from the old state. And my statement is that when people can shorten the time it takes them to see that they've fallen out of the state, because they notice that their reactions are unmatching again, they notice that they're thinking heavily negative or very deeply um, um, being identified with doubts again, when they can simply decrease that and then in a shorter period of time shift back into the wish fulfilled, that then also the process is better. Have you noticed that, or have you kind of like experienced something like that, or how do you see that
Yes.
point?
Yeah, I definitely have. When I first, like I said, when you first start anything, it's a skill. It takes time to develop it to because there's nuance, right? Because if you've never done anything before, it's like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely gets easier with time. And
Mm.
going back to awareness, this is why I say self-awareness is the most important principle.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
only when you are self-aware is when you can notice, like, hey, mate, oh wait, hold on, I'm not in the state right now, right? And people always talk about time. We could talk about people have a lot of time urgency, but what they fail to realize is that the time it takes, right? Everything has a bridge, but the feeling, like Neville said, it's the feeling of naturalness that really comes through.
Yeah.
So you can really shorten that, but it just takes it takes effort. You have to remain, self-critical in the sense, or self-aware in a sense,
Yeah.
and it definitely gets easier as you do it more and more and more. When you go from one shift and you shift state once, twice, then because you learn it, you pick up on like, okay, this I shouldn't be doing this, or maybe my reactions this way, or it should
Mm.
be like this. So yeah, it's definitely helped out,
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Cool. What's your experience with that when it comes to like the scene? And we talked about it earlier, and now we can maybe talk more about it, which is like a scene that
Right,
implies and the importance of the implication, like your
right.
point of view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's the first advice. Don't
Yeah.
don't reinvent the wheel. And I think Neville, I think it was in the course, but Neville talks about it. I think it's just human nature. We try to overcomplicate simple things for whatever reason. I don't know why we just do. So as far as the scene, because that was one thing with me, I was kind of happy. I think when you don't really know anything, I feel like it's a little bit easier to do something when you have less like awareness to it,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of because you don't know like if you're doing it right or wrong,
Yeah.
right? So for
True.
me, the
True.
scene was a lot easier to do because I
Mm.
didn't have a lot of like, oh, wait, well, am I doing it right, or oh, I should do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very funny. I did the same thing. You overcomplicate it a lot. It's very, very simple. It's like Neville talks about the importance of the scene is not the scene itself,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the implication
Yeah.
in regards to what you desire.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it too. There's a lot of techniques like congratulation techniques, um, but everybody's different. We all have different nuances. Like if you use the scene of like congratulations, and you were thinking of a friend saying it to you, not everybody's gonna say like, "Hey, bro, congratulations."
Yeah.
That doesn't feel natural. And I
Mm-hmm.
think and I definitely experienced it. Is you get they're guidelines, right? Just like with all this, is nothing more than guidelines.
Right.
You have to add your own elements to it.
Yeah.
So if for you, what would feel natural is somebody being like, yeah, no way you did that. As a scene, that is more effective because that's natural.
Mm.
If you don't have friends that are like, hey, bro, congratulations on $10,000 a month, like nobody would say that.
Yeah.
Or at least my friends wouldn't say that. If I told them, hey, I make X, Y, and Z, they wouldn't be like, hey, bro, congratulations on $10,000 a month in the business. They'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, whatever, bro. You think you're all that. But that's just that's just normal. I'm sure you have the same experience as far as simplifying it and making it feel natural because it should be fun.
Yeah. Always. I love what you're saying right now. This is so important to pick a scene that's subjective for oneself, right? I always said this one scene that I sometimes use is where I looked at myself on my bathroom mirror and I saw myself just smiling at myself, and I explained, from the outside it would look like a psychopath, who looks at himself in the mirror just smiling, feeling relief and happy. But I
Yeah.
knew what in this moment it implied for me subjectively. I know in which state it anchored me, like that relief that finally something is away. So maybe what we can do, because people listening here, I think we will have some people listening that are part of the program, some people that are not in the program that are still advanced on those teachings, but we might also have some people listening right now who are just following those teachings and they resonate and they would like some really practical thing to also take with after this interview, which they can do today. So, Vitto, I would like to ask you, if you want to, how would you tell someone that they have a goal right now? So that would be the one prerequisite I would say right now, that this would only make sense right now if you have a goal. Okay. But Vitto, what would you explain to someone with the scene approach? What should they do, or how would you then do it? Like, now I have this goal and I watch these interview. Vitto is this amazing, cool dude, and Nicholas, I get it, but what can I do right now? What would you tell such a person?
Yeah, I'll try to simplify because I've thought about this. This is a great question. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So the
Yeah.
first thing you said, the only prerequisite is a desire or a goal. To me, they're the same thing. So depending on what that desire is, I'll use an example. So let's say somebody said, "Hey, I want to make $10,000 a month." Okay, perfect. You have a desire. That's the first. That's the first and only prerequisite.
Yeah.
Nothing else is needed. So you have that. The second thing is I would ask them, okay, what would it be like if you had the $10,000 a month? What scene would imply that you have it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I would allow them to brainstorm, and it has to be something that they think was natural,
Yeah.
right? And everybody is different, so if the scene is different, so from that approach, is after the $10,000 a month is a goal, is what would imply it. That's the scene, and then I'll make it as simple as I can. The only thing you have to do, like the only work you really have to do,
Mm.
is when the desire arises
Mm-hmm.
again. Let's say you craft a scene and it makes you. And I would say another prerequisite in the scene is that it feels normal and natural to you, right? Because to
Yeah.
me, the end state or the wish fulfilled state is normality. Because we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about like if you gave a funny example in the course. It's like if you were a millionaire, you wouldn't wake up and do a backflip.
Yeah.
Like you said, with making money, but it's true. You know, that's the process of it and self concept. That's the process of it, is it becomes normal. So what would imply that it was normal? And then the only work you do is when the desire arises, take 10 to 15. I would advise, depending on how, if we're using a scale, let's say the desire at 1 to 10, 10's like, I need it right now. And one is
Mm.
like, don't even care if it passed. I would use that as like a mental tool and to gauge yourself, like, okay, if my desire is like a 6 plus,
Yeah.
6, 7, 8 plus, do a longer imagination session. And we
Mm-hmm.
have talked about this too. And this has really been a game changer for me. So sit down, close your eyes, relax yourself, get to the point, a state akin to sleep,
Mm.
right? Relax your body, relax the mind, sit there. For me, what I do is I sit there and I just rest to the point that my mind, I'm kind of in that drowsy state, and I can notice because my mind starts to quiet down. And when the
Mm.
mind is
Yeah.
quiet, loop the scene,
Mm-hmm.
whatever scene you have. And it can be, it doesn't need to be a long scene. For me, it's always been like a 5 second scene.
Yep.
Like I said, when
Mm.
I manifested me coming home, it was literally me opening my my pantry door. That was it.
Yep.
I just looped this
Very short.
over
Mm.
and over and over. But and another thing important is make sure that it's from the angle of you doing it, not like you seeing yourself do it.
Yep.
And what I mean, not like a third person, like like if for that scene, I was actually opening the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I was watching myself open the pantry, because that's not you would not watch yourself open the
Exactly.
pantry
Exactly.
from a third person. Like, yeah, I don't know yeah, that's not it.
Yeah.
And just repeat that process whenever the desire comes up. So you have the desire comes up, oh, I want it so bad. Oh, I'm really, really thinking about it. Stay to kind of sleep, 10 to 15 minutes, do a deep session, just loop it over and over and over and over and over and over again. After that session, it should be neutral or it should be low. For me, if you've done it correctly, it just feels like, it's like it's done.
Yeah.
It's the best way to put it. You get
Mm-hmm.
that it's done feeling. And
Mm.
then if it pops up again, no matter if it's one day, an hour later, 2 days later, whatever, same process. Go back into it, loop the scene again. And then after some time, and I would say depending on how high the desire was starting, this is just like, being theoretical. If you had like a 10 desire, after some time, it'll eventually get to the point where it's like you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
and you don't even have the desire. Like when you think about doing a scene, you're like, dude, I don't want that. Like you just because the knowing from that you have built faith and
Mm.
you've experienced in your mind's eye. And I was gonna put another point. Daniel had, and this is a really crucial point. Daniel really shout out to your mentor by the way.
Yeah.
When he talked about imagination, where you experience it happening now,
Mm-hmm.
not to
Yes.
happen in the future.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
a very crucial key.
Mm-hmm.
You experience in your mind eye. That's a real event that's going on right now.
Yeah.
And if you come from that premise, there, there's no way it won't happen.
Same. I was said the same right now. Like if you follow this method, then I have not found a like one thing where I saw, oh, then it wouldn't happen. Like usually there are the common things such as falling back in doubt, falling back into the old
Right.
state, not persisting. Um yeah, basically that's it. I just made a video on this. Like three biggest mistakes is imagining to get in the future, what you just said, right? Is to project the desire into the future. Like when it happens on the outside, then I'm in the wish fulfilled instead of in the here
Right.
and now, like you so beautifully said, experiencing the wish fulfilled. Yeah, and a couple of other obstacles, but that was on point. So basically, everybody who listened to that right now got a free coaching session on how to imagine the end state properly. That was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I have one more topic in my mind right now, and then we have to see where we take it from there. If they're like concluding tips from you, I would like to ask you about the power of community, because some people that watch my channel might have noticed that I am a big I'm going big on community right now. I say, hey, let's join together a space, a community where we not only help the individual achieve their goals, but where we also make the world a better place, like as a bigger vision, so to speak, where there's really a place where, yes, we help each other to grow. Yes, we have this community of people who all resonate with those teachings, but we also having a vision of like really, hey, making an impact and producing good and conscious things in this world. How do you see that? Like genuinely, authentically, like asking, like, how did the community play a role in your journey? How do you view that? That would be like a question that would interest me.
Yeah. Community is probably one of the most important, if not, because if we just look at the world, it's just one big community. And in my opinion, if we're just being
Yeah,
honest, we're just one big community, but
the
we're just
Earth community.
subsidizing.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're the Earth community. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But but community is such an important. It's such an important thing because as everybody becomes aware on an individual level, collectively,
mm,
everybody benefits, right?
yes,
And we were talking about this beforehand. Community is so important because when I first joined the program, initially I just joined for the content, right?
yeah,
And I
sure,
didn't take into consideration just how important or how beneficial the community really was. I
mm,
was more of like, yeah, I'm going to go in, just do my lessons, learn, apply. But what I found out was, especially the second time around going in the course, was you get so much more out of it when you go through and you're connecting with other people because life is all about relationships. It's all about connecting with one another. It's not like it's just you against the world. That's not what it is.
yeah,
Life is about relationship. It is about community and being surrounded. I mean, in whatever environment, community is important.
yeah,
That's why, in
cool,
team sports, you want to be around people that are the veterans, so to speak, right?
yeah,
You want to be around the people that have been around for a long time and they have the experience. And the beauty of it is just the difference in people, right? Because you have some people that just coming in, and you have
mm,
more moderate people that have kind of been around the journey a little bit, and then you have people that really understand the principles.
yeah,
And when you have that diversity within that group, like it's like a beautiful culture. Like that's the best way I can put it. It's so important because it allows you to express and you're able to connect with people that have a similar view in life as you do. Because I mean that's what people like themselves. That's just human nature and being able to
absolutely,
be surrounded and to ask people. Like I said, if I had the opportunity to go back in time, right, fast forward,
mm,
dude, I would have been set if I would have joined the community.
yeah,
Because if I would have gone from nothing to having all those people, because I'm sure like you did, you probably just learned you had a mentor, right? That
mm,
came later on. But when you first get into it, you're like by yourself. So you're trying
yeah,
to teach yourself something that you don't know anything about,
yeah,
and then there's a lot of curveballs, just like we talked about, just the little nuances as little as experiencing the scene now. Like if I knew that way back when, it'd be totally different.
mm,
If I understood states, life would be totally different.
yeah,
But being able to be surrounded by people like that and be able to express yourselves and connect with people, It's priceless. It
Yeah.
really is. It's the future. It's the future. That's what life is. It's all about community.
So for someone listening, is
Yeah.
there anything you would say, hey, learn this stuff, do chess this stuff, whatever
Yeah.
is on your mind that you want to give as a tip?
Well, I'll reiterate the first point we were talking about the scene because that right there is a game changer. So when we're
Okay.
talking about techniques, I'll kind of break it down like this. So if I had to give the best advice for techniques, right, I'll use the scene because like I said I've had a lot of good experiences. It's like the most baseline. There's other techniques, and I'm not saying they don't work. It's really on an individual basis. But as far as doing the technique part of manifestation, back to the point. Make it simple, right? Step one, you have a desire, you have a
Mm.
goal.
Mm-hmm.
Step two, seeing that would imply fulfillment in that desire. Step three, do the session, 10 to 15 minutes. You can do it shorter. If you don't have 10 to 15 minutes, you can do 5 minutes. But the more you saturate yourself, the better.
Yeah.
Number four, when you do it in the context of it's happening right here and now, as if what you're seeing in your mind's eye is happening in reality. To the
Yes.
point, I've got to the point sometimes, I'm sure you can acknowledge, where when you come out of the session, you're like, yo, where the hell did it go?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Often.
and
Yeah.
that shows you, that shows me at least, and I'm sure you can attest to it that like, yo, I was really experiencing that.
Yep.
Number five, if the desire arises again, repeat the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go back in your imagination, calm the mind, 10 to 15 minutes, do a deep session. It's something that a scene that implies fulfillment in the context of that it's happening here now. Do that over and over again, and you will get to the point where you don't even think about it. That's what my experience when it's done about it, it's not a desire, it's a knowing. It's like, yeah, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's done. So that's my advice for techniques. I mean, you can do other techniques, but I think visualization is the core. I think it's
Yep.
easiest to do when you first start out, just because everybody has imagination, right? And it's just the most baseline, most proven tested. So that's my advice for as far as techniques and especially doing a scene. Number two, when we're talking about self concept, focusing apart from the techniques part, right? Because that's an important process. Focusing on self concept is, in my opinion, the most important aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most important because everything comes from self concept. And like I said, shifting self concept also comes from states, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an easy way to do it, like one of the members, I believe his name is Sam.
Mm-hmm.
He had some success, and he shifted his self concept into being a real estate. I think it's investor. I might
Yeah.
be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or
Real
investor, an
estate.
entrepreneur,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because just like we were talking about earlier, where there's a desire for a manifestation, there's a self concept of you that can gain it and maintain it, right? And like for everybody, I want everybody to not only experience it once, but regularly. Like we were talking about, I want it to be normal. But picking a scene is another way to do that when you shift self concept, right? So if you had a desire, I want to make $10,000 a month. Okay, who would I have to be? The question I always ask is, who would I have to be
Mm-hmm.
in order to get X, Y, and Z?
Yep.
Because the manifestation is just a natural byproduct of being that person.
Yeah.
So back to the scene. What would imply, okay, if I want to make $10,000 a month, obviously I'm a successful business owner. Back to what I was talking about with the techniques. Okay, what's a scene that would prove or would imply that I'm a successful business owner? And run that scene over and over. And I would focus more so on that
Mm.
first, because as a byproduct, like I said, the money or whatever amount will come as a self concept. Once the self concept shifts, you'll have the inclinations, you'll have the thoughts that you will be led, just like Neville says.
Yeah.
And then that's self concept technique. And then the last thing I would say is meditation. Meditation, in my opinion, is very
Mm.
underrated. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, and I'm not even saying not if just throw manifestation out the window. I'm not saying for manifestation. I think it's very helpful for manifestation, but just for a quality of life, it's been
Mm.
9 day. A 9 day. If you like, for me, I try to do like 2 to 3 20-minute meditation sessions. Some days I obviously don't get to it, but that right there has been such a game changer for quality of life, for peace of mind. And going into it also with manifestation, we're talking about shifting states. When you come to a place of stability, whole, and abundance, dude, it's infinitely easy to shift states,
Yeah.
right? Because most of the kickback is because you feel like you're lacking something, right? You're like,
Yes.
oh, and it's like what you said, that's the biggest game changer for me. Also, was it's you give yourself within, and then so without. That's why that's one of the most powerful quotes, as within, so without. It doesn't say as without, so within. It's not how it works.
That would be
So
funny.
go in with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm about to say we be cooked. Yeah, I'm about to say we go back into it. This interview ain't happening if that's how it is. Mud
But
huts and everything else.
those
But
those
those are
were
probably yeah.
yeah. Anything else? Anything else you want to add? Because I think you were like very detailed and you
Uh,
really express like core components of the teachings, like core components for the
yeah.
direct shifting approach, like the scene, all of that, the awareness meditation aspect. Anything else that comes to your
Uh,
mind?
yeah. I will add actually because I was thinking about this is because like I said,
Sure.
we are talking about happiness in general and well being. Like I said, it's nice to get things. We all want things. We all have desires, but in reality, that's such a very small part of it. And just thinking about it realistically, like Nicholas, for yourself, when you were first, when you with anybody that has a desire, it's a burning desire. But once you get it, it becomes normal,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So and that's with anything and everything. It doesn't matter how nuanced it is. I mean, variety is the spice of life. You know, they always say that. But the thing is, no matter how nuanced and how like big that is at one point, at some point, it's going to come down to neutral and be natural.
Yeah.
You know, and this is going into meditation, but also into awareness. If you will, in my opinion, suffering will always come if you attach it from external, whether it be a
Mm-hmm.
person, whether it be amount of money, whether it be a car, because what you're saying is you're whole and complete. But when you do that, you're unconsciously putting that thing on a pedestal. If you always look externally, right? And this is for quality of life. If you always put happiness onto something outside of you, there will all suffering will always ensue
Mm.
because after it loses its variety, its nuance, if you are seeking something externally, you'll never be. And whether
Yeah.
it be a person, and this is what I was talking about with it's with self concept in general. A lot of times people are like, oh, is this person make me happy?
Yeah.
Or they're seeking validation from this one person and
Mm.
they think it's that one person, but it's not. It's that area of life. It's them in relationships, or it's
Mm-hmm.
them in with money, or it's them with friendship. It's never about the specific person, but it's about the area of life of what it's telling you. So if you feel and if you put in your happiness and fulfillment, contentment, all this, if you don't give it to yourself,
Mm.
you will you'll be chronically unhappy
Yeah.
because not saying that you can't maintain it, but just a reality like things change,
Yeah.
things come and go. A car might be destroyed, a relationship might end, a business, amount of money might come down for a little bit. And if your whole well-being and and I used to do this too, I think it's like a natural thing, or maybe it's just for me at least, was I used to externally, when you start viewing the world as everything you need is internally,
Mm.
life becomes way more blissful. When you talk
Absolutely.
about peace, that's the pinnacle of peace. And also, it's a very important, in my opinion, if you want any type of, we're talking about community and relationships in general. I'm not even talking about specific, like romantic relationships, but there's something about when you are stable and you're whole and complete. It's like you're like a magnet. Like people
Yeah.
radiate to that because what will happen if you're not? That's where neurosis comes in. That's where those negative experiences come in. It's
Mm.
because you're subconsciously seeking something from somebody, and people don't realize that it's just like it's like Neville said, you can never outwork a state.
Yeah.
So you can take all the physical approach. I'll be as aware as possible. I'm not gonna be clingy, or I'm not gonna be this and that. But you'll always go back to default settings. Self
Yeah. That's
concept
so
will
right.
always ensue. Maybe for a little bit, you can kind of you can kind of force your will. You're like, yeah, I'm not doing it. But at some point, like you talk about in the course, that inner thermostat is going to come back
Mm.
to who you are. That self concept, and
Yeah.
that's why I say self concept is the most important because
Yeah.
you always come back to it. So if you want to change how things, the relationship you have with things, change yourself first. And that's why
Mm.
Neville always said he never said go change the world
Yeah.
indirectly you will, but he always said focus on yourself. He said change you. Like I said, if we talk about the mirror, you don't
Mm.
look in the mirror, it doesn't smile back, you break the mirror. Like, no, you don't do that. You smile at the mirror and it smiles back to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would probably be my last point. And that's just like a quality of life thing, which to
Mm.
me is it's probably I don't want to say more important, but it's very important because that is like 80 to 90% of your life is the day to day. It's it's the doing the things, it's the tasks during the day. It's not saying that, great things won't happen. It's fantastic when you visualize something that comes to fruition, but that like, yeah, I got it. Is only it's very, it
Yeah.
slips away.
I appreciate so much that you highlight the fact of the awareness aspect so much, because if I think about it right now, you just made me reflect. Like if we look at the manifestation space, as you said it in the beginning also, and I have the same point of view, is that it's a lot on techniques. It heavily relies on get this, get the quick lottery win, get this, get this, get this. And again, all cool, all relevant to some degree. I'm not, I mean, I teach manifestation. I love manifestation. It's very, relevant as well. But if it's only manifestation is what we have discovered, then it becomes tricky, because then we just chase like the next thing to fulfill us a little bit. Then, I know I need this thing, and now I need this thing in my life. And then it gets into the hamster wheel. But if, like you said, this is why it's a foundation also of the Upgrade Your Life program. If we also focus on this awareness aspect and we understand it's all within us, we understand, like you said, that life happens in us, that if we want to see a change, we can give it to ourselves within, then the whole peace sets in. Then the whole, calmness, like you said, the depths of the ocean, all of that sets in. And that can be so long lasting and not just, manifestation, but now it got normal. Now my life feels dull and I feel unhappy. Yeah, because you attach the happiness to the manifestation, but find the happiness within you by understanding more about yourself, right? By investigating, hey, if my thoughts change, if my emotions change, if my outside world, everything changes, but what is ever present? Like who am I, right? And then we connect with that deep sense of I am, and we stabilize that with meditations and knowingly dwelling there. Then this is a whole game changer in the whole approach. So yeah, I loved how you put that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. The beautiful stuff. You hit the nail on the head. I couldn't agree more. To me, it's I don't want to say more important, but almost to a fact because it takes up more time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
I know.
manifestations.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
if we're doing a scale of like 0 to 100, let's say it's like if you looked at a keyboard, right? The day-to-day life is like the white, and then manifestations are
Mm,
like the black notes. There's not as many,
interesting.
and they're spaced out in
Nice.
between.
Yeah, I like
So if
that.
you only focus on
Mm,
those, you're missing out on all the white, which is the majority of life. So
damn,
you're
that's
just
good.
suffering like 90% of the time.
Really good. Really good. Well put. That was awesome. I think we could go on deeper, more and more and more. What I like to do is I like to let also the audience decide. So guys, please let us know in the comments below. Vito shared amazing stuff. So first of all, give him some props in the comments. I want to hear you cheer Vito up. Then also let us know if you want to hear part two. I'm always open for part twos, right? With Harris, I did like 3 parts, I think, up until this point right now.
Oh yeah,
I want to thank you for initializing all of that in your imagination, and for coming on, for doing the interview, for sharing your insights, sharing your stories, for also motivating and empowering the audience that we have here right now. So thank you very much. And it was great to speak with you, man. It was awesome.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicholas.
Yeah. Bye, guys.